Il est considéré comme l'un des plus grands acteurs du monde. Sa présence intimidante à l'écran est sa marque de fabrique, aussi bien dans les drames que dans les comédies dans lesquelles il a joué. Son implication légendaire pour ses rôles l'a mené à des transformations physiques impressionnantes. Ses performances ont engendré quelques-unes des répliques les plus reprises de l'histoire du cinéma. Nominé 6 fois, il a reçu 2 Oscars. Il est également réalisateur et le fondateur d'un des festivals de films les plus importants aux États-Unis. Bien qu'il soit surtout un New-Yorkais, Robert De Niro est également un trésor américain. Robert Anthony De Niro Jr. est né à Greenwich Village, à New York, le 17 août 1943. De sang italien et irlandais, il est le seul enfant de Robert et Virginia De Niro qui étaient tous deux artistes.
Robert De Niro had creativity in his blood. His parents, Robert Sr. and Virginia, were both successful painters, and they actually divorced when Robert was just 2. His father eventually came out as gay, but he always lived nearby and was a big part of his son's childhood. Though in movies, Robert De Niro has an image of a tough guy, as a kid growing up in Little Italy, he was anything but. He was very thin and his skin was very pale, and his nickname was Bobby Milk. Robert De Niro got his first acting role at 10 years old, playing the Cowardly Lion in a school production of The Wizard of Oz. He eventually dropped out of high school so he could pursue acting full-time and studied with the acclaimed teachers Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler.
Il a étudié avec les plus grands et en est devenu un lui-même. Aujourd'hui encore, les gens aiment entendre De Niro parler de cinéma.
Movies, they don't rehearse as much. You have like table readings, sit around, you get up and work on certain things. And some directors like to rehearse. I tend to feel those are directors that are more from the theater, where that's what you have to do. And you do in movies sometimes, but sometimes you like to have it understood what it is, and then on the day, as they say, you do it. And I like that too, because it allows for a certain spontaneity.
It is a thing, kind of a chemistry in a way of interacting with somebody and having something there, whether it be the actual lines or whether you're improvising somewhat or ad-libbing or whatever. If you have a rhythm with the person and something, then it makes it easier.
Raging Bull wasn't actually the first time that Robert De Niro changed his body for a role. He lost 30 pounds to play the part in the drama Bloody Mama in 1970. And also for the same movie, he spent his whole lunch hour in a grave just to get into one scene. He later said he probably didn't need to go that far, but at that time, that's what he did.
3 ans plus tard, il allait travailler avec un réalisateur qui deviendrait un collaborateur et ami de longue date.
People always assume Marty and I are so much alike because we're both from New York and maybe because we've done so many films together. And the fact is that we really are very different.
De Niro and Martin Scorsese actually grew up in the same neighborhood in New York City, and they saw each other around a lot, but they never got to know each other.
It's amazing when I think back to when I used to see Marty over 30 years ago standing in a hallway when we were kids, that we'd ever wind up in this situation.
They worked together for the first time on Mean Streets in 1973, which co-starred Harvey Keitel. The film was thought of as quintessentially New York, but the truth is, most of it was shot in Los Angeles. De Niro went all out to play Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2. He lived for 4 months in Sicily and learned to speak the Sicilian dialect that he used in the film. And all his hard work paid off because he was nominated for an Oscar and won for Best Supporting Actor. The famous "You Talkin' to Me" line in Taxi Driver was actually improvised by De Niro on the spot. It's since become an iconic line of dialogue, and people still shout it out to him when they see him on the street. He says it does kind of get annoying, but he likes when kids do it. He thinks that's funny.
Talking to me?
De Niro's first wife was a singer and actress named Diana Abbott. They were married in 1976, and he adopted her daughter from a previous marriage, Drina. And Drina is actually an actor and has appeared in some of De Niro's movies like Wag the Dog. They also had a son together, Raphael, who was named after the hotel in Rome where he was conceived. To prepare for his part in The Deer Hunter, De Niro spent time working and socializing with actual steelworkers. He'd have them introduce him as Bob, and nobody knew that he was an actor. He was just one of the guys. He later said that that film was one of the most intense to film physically and emotionally. And there's a hospital scene in there that still gets to him. He was talking about it recently in a TV interview, and he actually broke down in tears just remembering the scene. De Niro always goes all out for his movies, but never more so than when he played the real-life boxer Jake LaMotta in Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull. First of all, he gained 60 pounds for the part, which was a record. And he even entered 3 real-life boxing matches and won 2 of them. Scorsese wasn't the driving force behind Raging Bull. It was actually De Niro. At the time, Scorsese was in the hospital recovering from a cocaine addiction, and De Niro went to the hospital and said, "You've got to get better so we can make this boxing movie." And they did, and the result is one of Hollywood's great classic films, and De Niro won the Oscar for Best Actor.
En 1987, De Niro rejoint Mickey Rourke et le réalisateur Alan Parker dans Angel Heart, aux portes de l'enfer. Il y joue son rôle le plus sombre.
The electricity that he generates, the concentration that he generates, and the way in which he has a chemical effect on everybody on the film set is something that I've never experienced before.
He's the most concentrated actor I've ever seen, and he doesn't, you know, if you like lose your concentration with him for like 4 seconds, you're out of there. So like, it was, at the end of the day, I was drained.
I've always wanted to work with him, and I think it's the biggest sort of privilege I've ever had as a director to work with him.
La même année, De Niro partage l'écran avec 2 autres pointures, Sean Connery et Kevin Costner dans Les Incorruptibles.
When it comes to preparing his characters, De Niro is nothing if not meticulous. He learned that his character Al Capone liked a certain kind of silk underwear. Well, he insisted that the producers track it down for him to wear under his suits, even though the cameras would never see it.
En rejoignant Joe Pesci et Ray Liotta dans Les Affranchis, il ne cesse de porter une grande attention aux petits détails.
There's a scene where his character gives out money to all these people. Well, he insisted it be real money. So the prop master used $5,000 of his own cash in the scene, and at the end of each take, no one was allowed to leave the set until all the money was accounted for.
Pour le thriller au casting de taille, Les nerfs à vif, De Niro transforme à nouveau complètement son corps.
He got his body fat ratio down to 3%. He changed his teeth. He actually paid a dentist $5,000 to mess them all up. And then after the film was over, he had to pay $20,000 to have them made pretty again. The thick accent that De Niro put on as Max Cady in Cape Fear didn't just creep out audiences, it creeped out the director, Martin Scorsese. In fact, De Niro just couldn't resist calling Scorsese's house and leaving messages on his machine as Max Cady.
Après ça, De Niro se lance dans quelque chose de complètement différent et partage l'écran avec un autre acteur de légende d'Hollywood.
I'm sorry more members of the foreign press aren't with us tonight, but many of them were deported right before the show.
After his first marriage ended, De Niro started a long-term relationship with an African-American fashion model named Toukie Smith. They were together through most of the mid-90s and had twin sons together, Aaron and Julian.
En 1993, De Niro fait ses débuts en tant que réalisateur avec Il était une fois le Bronx, mais il n'en est pas à ses premiers essais en matière de réalisation.
Movies that I've been in, you know, Goodfellas and Mean Streets and even Godfather 2 and Raging Bull, just certain things that I had done with Marty, just to try to remind myself I should do it differently because that's been done before, because there were a lot of similarities.
He knows Mulberry Street. He's made these movies with Marty before. He knows the element. He knows these street people. He knows how they act, how they think.
That's what attracted me. I knew that I could add some special feeling to it. I understood the whole milieu.
He's just so right on. His instincts are always right.
To me, that was important. So that the lead, Lilo Brancato, was he's a kid we found on a beach in New York, and Francis is from an open crawl, but they're real neighborhood kids.
I have great confidence in myself as an actor, you know, and I know that he will bring the best out of me.
You have to be very careful because, you know, you don't want to make people nervous or stiff, which they'll get anyway. I mean, everybody does. I do, we all do. It's just, you gotta like make everybody feel comfortable. Then you have to just steer them in the right direction.
When you get to know him, you're really comfortable. He just brings the best out of everybody, you know? Everything that he is everything that I hope to be.
Il reste en territoire familier avec le film qui suit en travaillant à nouveau avec Martin Scorsese. Casino est lui aussi un film violent sur des gangsters.
It's a movie about gangsters and hustlers and wise guys and gamblers. And we have to show what they do, and all that we show in the film has been based on real events at one time or another in that area and those characters.
Ayant déjà joué le diable, il enfile en 1996 un col de prêtre dans le film Sleepers.
De Niro is incredibly gentle to work with and generous and funny and kind and was very embracive to me and in a way that was professional and chivalrous and sweet.
The amount of excess and greed is what we're talking about in the film. So violence is definitely a part of that.
Even though they had both been in The Godfather Part 2, De Niro and Al Pacino had never been in a scene together until Michael Mann's Heat. In fact, that movie was billed as the powerhouse meeting between these two great actors.
As a director, I probably learned from two great actors about how to approach a scene like that. I knew what the scene was supposed to be like and how you approach that scene, how you're going to do that scene. So I really don't rehearse too much. I only want to take it to that degree of immediacy and magic when we're on the set and we're shooting it for real. Both guys were the same mind, because there's no doubt they were going to be totally in character. But to save it up for when we were across that table at Kate Manalini, and I set it up to do it with 3 cameras. The reason for that was because I knew that with artists of this caliber, that any one give and take would have its own organic unity. It would have its own identity. And that take 11 between the two of them would be a little bit different than take 13 between the two of them. And most of the scene is all from one take, it's all from take 11.
And the scene where they have dinner together is so memorable that you can actually go to that restaurant in Beverly Hills, Kate Manalini, and ask for that table.
En 1997, De Niro partage l'écran avec son vieil ami Harvey Keitel, Sylvester Stallone et le réalisateur James Mangold.
Bob had this thing he said to me, which is that he doesn't as a habit do movies with young directors. And one of the reasons he doesn't was because they're so amazed that they're working with Travis Bickle that they somehow don't assert themselves. In pre-production of the movie, he would have me over all the time to his loft, and we'd talk about the script and his role. He makes an effort to become a friend. If I'm going to do this, then we got to know each other. And the biggest thing Bob said to me, if I'm off in the scene, tell me. In the middle of the scene, tell me. Make me do it again. Stop me. Go around again. He said, in some way, talk to me with the cameras rolling, keep all the juices flowing, and keep it going. De Niro taught me an attention to detail. He was making the prop guy put stuff in every drawer in the desk. And there weren't many scenes in this office, and the prop guy comes up to me and he's like, we don't even have a scene where he does, what are we doing this for? And I was like, there was a part of me that's like, dude, it's Bob De Niro. Just put stuff in the desk. So Bob's sitting there and he's trying to figure out where he'd have his paper clips and where he'd have his rubber bands, and the prop guy's going like, oh, what a nightmare. And 3 days later, we're shooting one of Bob's final scenes in the movie, and when someone comes running in to tell him Stallone's come busting in downstairs bloody, carrying the guy they've all been looking for, and De Niro found this rubber band in his drawer, and as someone tells him the note, he started making a cat's cradle with his fingers out of this rubber band. And it's this brilliant little moment. You can see it, you can not see it, but it's again this lesson about the lesson for me was no matter how big anyone gets, no matter how huge or famous, these people are who they are because they give a damn about acting.
In 1997, De Niro married his second wife, a former flight attendant named Grace Hightower, and they had a rather tumultuous relationship. They had filed for divorce at one point, but it was never finalized, and in 2004 they got back together and renewed their vows, and they have 2 children together, a son, Elliot, and a daughter, Helen. The New York neighborhood of Tribeca has become synonymous with Robert De Niro. He named his production company after it, and in the wake of 9/11, he started the Tribeca Film Festival there.
Well, I'm happy the way it's going. How it'll wind up, who knows? I just hope it winds up in a good place. I know it will wind up in a good place. It's in a great place.
And he owns several restaurants and a hotel in the area, the Greenwich Hotel.
Over the next 12 days, we invite everyone to come downtown and enjoy all that Tribeca has to offer, from our diverse films to industry gatherings to free community events.
There's an old cliche that says that drama is easy and comedy is hard, but De Niro says the opposite is true, and that's why he's been doing so many comedies lately.
Il a travaillé avec quelques grands de la comédie, mais en 2002, il joue avec la légende de l'humour Eddie Murphy dans Showtime.
With Ben, Ben is one way. He's terrific, very funny, deadpan, straight. It's like, and, so when he's doing nothing, it's good. And Billy is the way he is, and it's another rhythm, interacting. And then Eddie's another way.
Freeze! LAPD! Whoa! Freeze! LAPD!
Sorry. Yeah, that's all right. What do I say?
Well, I don't really make that big a distinction between dramatic actors and comedians. For me, acting is acting.
Going into the old record here. Woo!
For the simple fact that he's Robert De Niro and he's one of the top 5 actors that ever did it, I was charged up to work with him, and you're gonna learn something from work with an actor like that. But I was thinking more actor to actor than comedian to dramatic actor.
Oh, wait, he's not a detective.
I'm a detective on the show. On this show, I'm a detective.
I'll never forget, my first moment on the set. Eddie's standing there in his cop outfit. My dad's there, and I'm, next to Renee. And I'm just like, I don't believe this.
What's just the plan? Why don't you stand up and wave your arms in the air? Maybe you'll draw their fire. That's the plan.
I've seen him work for years, so I know that he is already great to work with. And he's been very fair, very supportive.
We're going to charge you with possession of cocaine for sale. We're going to charge you with attempted murder of a police officer. Who are you working for?
He's like a police officer. I've done this a lot of times, this scene. And in real life, he's very, very real in what he's doing. It's very believable. And it's a real honor to be there, I must say.
Him, it's like, I see it differently. It's more like, it's not like, oh my God, I'm working with De Niro. Because it's just different, But that's like, oh my God, I'm working with my dad. And, let me just make sure I know my lines and don't do something completely stupid.
Bob comes from a real, honest, plays his comedy as straight as can be. And so they're great. They're so much fun to watch.
I was gassed up just to be working with De Niro.
À suivre, De Niro retourne à la comédie et continue de montrer l'exemple à des générations de jeunes acteurs.
De Niro had a health scare in 2003 when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, but the surgery was successful and he's since gone into remission.
Comme s'il n'avait pas tout fait, il incarne en 2007 un capitaine de bateau fanfaron nommé Shakespeare dans l'aventure fantaisiste de science-fiction Stardust, le mystère de l'étoile.
I think Bob is one of the top 3 living actors in the world, and he's been a hero of mine since I was a boy. When we sat down in the first casting meeting and his name came up for Shakespeare, I just grinned and went, if only.
Maybe they're up here for the same godforsaken reason we are.
Captain Shakespeare, I did want to have a man that was very well known for being a tough, macho. I don't think anybody doubts whether he is a man's man.
Did you ever think of that?
De Niro's directed 2 movies, A Bronx Tale and The Good Shepherd, and he would like to do more, but it's very difficult to get a movie off the ground.
There's an anxiety about whether you can deliver, whether you can get another movie made, whether you can get the actors. Sometimes it's hinging on one actor.
For The Good Shepherd, he spent 8 years developing the script and trying to get the money, and it wasn't until Matt Damon signed on as star that the studio gave them the go-ahead.
My experience in directing like The Good Shepherd and Bronx Tale, but The Good Shepherd especially, is there's a lot of anxiety-provoking situations as a director, producer, whatever.
And he did say that he would occasionally call his pal Marty Scorsese for directing tips.
Directing myself, I'm not so crazy about, but I will do it though. But I like them both. Yeah.
Casting qui peut paraître étrange quand en 2010, Robert De Niro interprète un sénateur excessif dans le film ultra-violent de Robert Rodriguez.
This movie has the most out there, amazing cast. I mean, people were wondering why this mix of actors. I mean, what kind of project is this that you have Robert De Niro in the same movie with Steven Seagal, with Don Johnson, Lindsay Lohan?
What I liked about the character was just that it was a fun thing to do, and there was a sense of irony, and it's not taken seriously. So that frees you to have fun with it without being weighted down by certain requirements.
This frito bandito is not any closer to justice.
En 2010, il joue avec Edward Norton dans Stone, qui est, malgré son immense talent, lui aussi épaté par sa collaboration avec De Niro.
There's a scene where he speaks to his priest, his pastor, about basically the fact that he doesn't believe in God. And I think it's like a masterpiece of acting, I really do.
He saves his energy for the moment of action being called.
The thing that was interesting about it was that this temptation, the siren in front of him, and the guilt and all these kind of classic, almost biblical sort of temptation.
There's a way that he approaches a character's inability to speak authentically about what he's feeling that I can't even, it gave me chills watching it.
Some critics give De Niro a hard time for drifting into crowd-pleasing comedies in more recent years instead of doing the heavy drama that he's known for, but even he has a sense of humor about it. When he got the Lifetime Achievement Award for the Golden Globes, he said,
"Thank you for this extraordinary honor. I was very, very moved and gratified when you made the announcement 2 months ago, well before you had a chance to review Little Fuckers." Yeah.
For me, it's all about just being able to work with Robert De Niro.
The first, kind of scene in Meet the Parents where, I'm kind of giving kind of a monologue and I kind of turn and kind of seeing De Niro, it did make me a little bit self-conscious and, that take definitely wasn't usable.
There's a part late in the movie where he dives into one of those ball pits that there are at children's parties. And he did the stunt. He leaped up into the air and went face first into a bunch of plastic balls.
And action.
I mean, he's really up for it, and in pretty good shape. It was fun too. There's a part where he gets in a fight. It was fun to see his old sort of raging bull moves kicking back in.
When Greg has to go home and meet Pam's parents for the first time, and you open the door and it's Robert De Niro. He comes with the history of all of those sort of iconic tough guys that he's played.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you something, Randy. You can pump, dump, and hump all you want. You can sandbag in this job.
It's just fun. It's just, it's anytime you get a chance to work, I still feel excited coming to work with Bob. I feel comfortable calling him Bob finally after 10 years.
At this point in his career, De Niro is starting to co-star with actors who became actors because of Robert De Niro. And one such actor is Bradley Cooper, who he worked with on Limitless.
The idea of working with Robert De Niro is scary initially, and then he makes you feel completely at ease.
Obviously, we want to be as helpful and respectful as possible.
Which was a coup to get him. And it wound up being probably the biggest asset of the film.
Like in all the best De Niro roles, there's something sort of just a little sinister under the surface, and and De Niro can do that so well too.
I wish you'd come to be honest with me in the first place, Eddie.
There's something about when De Niro showed up on set, everything kind of changed, and everything got quiet and very efficient, which was fantastic.
De Niro is one of our most private actors. He doesn't like to give interviews, and he really wants to stay an observer. He likes going around New York City and just being one of the crowd. He says one of the worst things about being famous is that everyone's always nice to you and nobody ever wants to tell you no.
Well, I sometimes think that as I get older, things have been predetermined for me way before. And others, you do have a choice that you can change. And then that choice that you make, the change, is still part of this grand scheme. It's like those birds that fly 9,000 miles from one end of the earth to the other. From the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. They find their way there every year or whatever. It's just, somehow as you get older in a cycle, you realize that, gee, this kind of happened, but I guess in a way it was planned for me.